Ridley.
Just hang it up, man.
Stop.
Dude, he's already working on Gladiator 3.
What would you rather have him make? Another Alien film or Gladiator 3?
I'd 100% rather watch Gladiator 3 because I'm done with the graping of Alien.
But he is threatening that third David movie.
Watch me. I'll do the fingering.
He's threatening that Alien movie because Romulus did so well.
Strength among us! This our own treason, heroes!
Tears on the mausoleum floor. Blood stains the Coliseum doors.
24 years later, for a sequel no one asked for.
And no one needed.
And after seeing it, my opinion has not changed.
It's an overdone copy of the first film.
And you know how sometimes you make a copy of a copy, it's not quite as sharp as, well, the original.
Now, I will say this, though, as forgettable as it is, it wasn't the train wreck that I was expecting it to be.
No, we went in thinking like this is going to be absolute dog shit.
Yeah.
And I guess because it had that blueprint of the first film to follow, it was somewhat competent, but it wasn't really great.
Yeah, it's like you have the competency of a seasoned Ridley Scott behind it.
Right.
Aside from it being shitty, my main concern was that they were going to kind of Marvel it a bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Not a great plan.
they didn't really do that. Marvel got popular, and so then like every other franchise was like, "Oh, we gotta do the same thing."
Yeah.
And so then you have like a horror movie like The Mummy come out with Tom Cruise. They turned that into a fucking Marvel movie. It's a cinematic universe now, and like all this bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I hear Gladiator 3 might be on the way, so get ready for an expansion.
The Gladiator cinematic universe is upon us.
Please, don't.
Fucking Ridley Scott.
Had a good time. Fantastic.
That dude should have retired
Hey
15
man,
years ago.
He's probably in my top 5 favorite directors of all time. But out of all those directors, no one has a filmography full of hits and misses like he does.
Yeah, and of course the latter half of his career has been mostly misses, because that's what happens. It happens to all of us. You lose your edge over time.
You lost your edge.
You forget what made your previous works awesome. It's like a good example is when you watch Alien and then Prometheus.
Hey, baby.
This being a complete, like, soft reboot, it felt like, of the original Gladiator. It follows the first film almost beat for beat for a large chunk of the main story. But then it, like, branches out and adds in a lot of extra characters who are all kind of scheming and doing their own thing, which kind of bloats it a little bit. You've got Lucius, the little boy from the first film, who is now an adult. Paul Mescal, I mean, I think he's good.
He's fine. Like,
but he does not have the screen presence of Russell Crowe.
He's got a nice beard, though. And speaking of nice beards, let's talk about how we here at Hardcut are working with our very first affiliate, Western Razor. I used to use a certain brand of razor, but after that company sort of cucked out circa 2019,
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
I've been kind of homeless on the razor front for some time now. For the past few years, I've been scouring the internet for new razor options, which unfortunately have left me with varying quality results. That is until now. You see, for the past month, I've been using my Western Razor. Well, I can confidently say that my search for an affordable, quality razor has finally come to an end. Most big razor companies don't live up to the hype. They make their cheap, disposable plastic razors overseas and they jack up the price. Or they hook you up with a subscription model, which ends up costing you hundreds of dollars a year. Then they keep adding blades and aloe strips and it just keeps getting clogged. The truth is, other razor companies are lying to your face. You see, Western Razor is different. They make safety razors here in the USA. They are 100% metal, so you are not clogging landfills with plastic junk. You buy Western Razor once, and it basically lasts forever. Even the replacement razors cost pennies, so you are saving a ton of money over time. And right now, we have a special offer for you, our viewers. If you put in Hardcut 10 at checkout, you will receive 10% off your Western Razor. So do yourself and your wallet a favor and switch to Western Razor today. Western Razor, it is the last razor you will ever need. At the end of the first film, literally Maximus says, Lucius is safe.
Lucius is safe.
The movie wants us to believe that a moment later, Lucius's mom takes him off and she's like, we need to get you out of here because now that Maximus is dead, like all these people want to kill you. And yeah, like what the fuck? That was like not the impression we got at the end of Gladiator.
Yeah, right.
That first movie was making out the Senate to be like the savior of Rome.
Yeah, the Senate was about to take over.
Yeah, they were the good
apparently
guys.
the Senate shit the bed so hard
Oh my God.
that the second Maximus died, they were all like, oh, let's find someone else to be in power for now because we just can't handle
They turned into the fucking Biden administration. Just a colossal fuck up.
Dude, I knew the second that like stupid like text thing came up at the beginning of the movie, and it was like Maximus's dream died 5 seconds after he died. It's like, what?
Yeah, it's
like they didn't even attempt it. It just got fucked up immediately, which like renders his whole film like pointless in terms of what his mission and goal was.
Like Han Solo turning into a loser in Force Awakens.
Yeah.
There's just that thing with legacy sequels that just undoes what was great before, so they can have more conflict in this movie.
You can't build on it.
Yeah.
You just invalidate everything that came before.
Yeah.
Just so you could tell this new pointless story.
Or in the very beginning of Terminator Dark Fate, when they just kill John Connor right away.
Yeah, fuck him.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, huh?
I won't be back.
He gets sent away by Connie Nielsen, and he just goes to North Africa, where he just starts a life. But she stays, no problem.
She says she'll find him or come back for him or whatever.
Whatever. I guess she's just like, I'm not going to do that.
That whole aspect of the plot with Lucius going away.
It's half-assed.
It's half-assed. Like,
Yeah.
Because then at some point he becomes a badass warrior during all of that. Because now when
we don't get to see any of that.
Yeah,
He's
we
just
don't
like
see
all
any
of a
of
sudden
it.
he's this great fighter now.
How did that happen? You have all these questions.
Too many questions.
He's living in North Africa. He's married now, and that's when Rome shows up to the last free city in North Africa. They attack the city. His warrior wife gets killed, and he gets captured, becomes a slave, and then sold off as a gladiator to fight. So it follows the first film like very closely. And obviously the motivations are slightly different because Pedro Pascal, the general of the army, shows up and tells one of his men under his command to shoot that archer, which happens to be his wife. The guy shoots the wife, she dies, and then he just decides, well, I gotta go get my vengeance now against this one general, even though his wife died on the battlefield in a legitimate way.
Yeah,
it wasn't like Pedro Pascal like singled her out.
It was clearly not personal from Pedro Pascal.
Right. Commodus killing his family was 100% personal.
Yes, the original Commodus selected Maximus's family to be killed. You know, that's enough to like give you that revenge motivation.
Yeah, and Maximus's vengeance throughout the whole first film, it followed a line from A to B, and it never deviated.
He has no other motivations. That's
Right.
the motivation
Yeah, he
throughout
wants
the entire
he
film.
wants to fulfill the late emperor's dream of restoring the Republic to Rome, and he wants to get vengeance for his family. So
But even
everything is like against Commodus.
But even that motivation with restoring Rome, that's sort of secondary.
It is.
You know, all he cares about is revenge. Taking him out.
And I will have my vengeance. In this life or the next.
So it's like, yeah, he loses his wife in a very different manner. It's not the same at all. So his vengeance is like, it's a little misplaced.
Absolutely.
And then as the movie goes on, he starts to like shift his priorities a little bit towards different people. And then when he finally comes face to face with Pedro Pascal, like it's kind of earlier than I thought it would be in the film.
Yeah.
And like you're expecting more from it, and it's kind of weak.
They wrap it up in the most half-assed
And he
way possible.
he abandons it, and he's like, well, now I guess I'm after these two emperors,
Well,
and then I guess I'm after Denzel Washington. Like it just like keeps changing.
It's building up to that, and then when it finally happens, in that scene, he finds out, oh, this Pedro Pascal guy is actually not that bad of a dude.
He finds out because he talks to his
mother.
mother, and she's married to him, and she tells him like, no, he's a good man. But like
Okay.
he doesn't give a shit because he's like, well, I saw him kill my wife, or
Right,
like
exactly.
or order my wife to be killed. And then he finally meets him face to face. They have one conversation. And he's like, I guess I never really looked at the man.
Yeah.
Well, no shit. This is like your first face to face with him in the whole movie.
Yeah.
And like we're building up to this scene, and it should have been so much more powerful and impactful.
It could have been like where he ends up killing him, but then after he kills him, he finds out or realizes that like, oh wow, he was actually trying to restore Rome. He was actually a good guy.
Yeah, and he could have taken up Pascal's
exactly,
mission.
Yeah. Like so he has that weight of killing him on him, and then now he wants to like
Like,
do
now
right
I
by
got to
him.
do right. But exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It just
Yeah,
there's like so many missed opportunities.
Yeah, it reminded me of the one good thing about that shitty movie Troy.
That's why no one will remember your name.
the conflict between
Yeah.
Achilles and Hector.
Yeah.
You're rooting for Hector. Hector's a cool character, noble guy.
Yeah.
And then he ends up dying.
Yeah,
Like
he goes up against Brad Pitt.
Achilles
and like,
kills him. And that whole scene is great. Again, fuck that movie, but that stuff is good.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it actually does kind of weigh on Achilles. Peter O'Toole comes in, wants to get his son's body from him, like all this stuff. So then Brad Pitt learns sympathy through that, like through a good father. Like they use that event as like a good narrative device to make the character learn.
You're a far better king than the one leading this army.
So Achilles grows.
He grows, exactly.
Yeah.
But this does not have that. They just do it in a half-assed way.
Yeah, Lucius kind of comes to this conclusion because Pedro Pascal's just like telling him, and he's like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna kill him.
I don't want to kill you.
He gets all the way to this point, and then the emperors are just like, well, fuck this guy, and then they have their archers put 20 arrows into Pedro Pascal, and he's just done. And
Yeah,
it's like,
they Boromir him, and that's it.
yeah, they right? But before we get to that, when Lucius is sold into slavery, he's a prisoner, this is where we meet Denzel Washington's character.
Right.
And he's kind of like
The Oliver Reed character from the first
like
film.
Proximo.
You sold me queer giraffes. I want my money back.
You don't really know what his motivations are at first.
You find out that he's got more political aspirations.
Yes,
than
but like he
Proximo had.
takes Lucius under his wing because he sees the rage in him. You're gonna be a great gladiator because you just have rage in you. That's where they, like the first scene where he sees him like fight, like they just set free a bunch of CGI baboons. That was the first scene that really kind of takes you out of it because it looks so shitty. And he's
does.
fighting these like ridiculous dog monkey things. And he's just like wrestling what looks like a green mannequin or something. And then they just CGI'd like an ape over it. Like they just didn't look real at all.
No, it looked terrible. It has that almost like in The Mummy when the mummy opens up its mouth and its mouth is elongated. That's what they look like. When
Except
it was
it's not.
so exaggerated.
Except it's not 1999 anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, it looks stupid.
Yeah, and like you don't really get any of that shit in the original film. Like when they fight animals, it's like a real tiger.
Yeah, there are some shots where there's like some dodgy early 2000s
Yeah.
Comping in there.
The
you know what I
comping is
mean?
one thing.
But
This
it's not
is
like they
like-
fully CG'd a tiger and like had them fight CG tigers.
Right. Yeah, he fights this like baboon or whatever, and then
Yeah.
that's when Denzel sees something in him, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna take you up. You're gonna be my instrument. Like, what can I give you? And he's like, I want Pedro Pascal. He's like, okay. He takes him to Rome, and then he starts working his way up as a gladiator. You got now Denzel Washington is plotting against the two emperors, the
Yes.
fucking
And
gay
they-
psycho twins.
Yeah, the two twink, like weirdo fucking gay.
Let's talk about them for a second.
Yeah, of course,
Because
yeah.
as ridiculous as they were, I did enjoy their time on screen. Even though they were so over the top.
I did too, and like I remember thinking Joaquin Phoenix in the
Okay.
original,
You're not going to come close
no,
to him.
that's what I'm saying though, because it's a sequel and like you got to like overdo it in the second one.
They could have gone way further.
Yes, now they were still perverted and weird. I'm not saying that they weren't, but like I was expecting like Caligula level craziness between them. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
Like they kind of hint
They
at
were a
it.
little tame with that.
But they were a little tame with it, yeah. But that being
Yeah.
said though, I did like them. There was an interesting dynamic between
Yeah.
the two of them and
Yeah.
just kind of how they ruled.
But like we don't know enough about them.
Well, no,
like,
that's what I was gonna say. The entire time you're watching it, they seem kind of like inept psychopaths, and you're kind of thinking to
you're
yourself,
like, how
the
did
power.
these two retards come to power? They're idiots.
Those idiots.
I want to know what happened in this 16 years where the Senate just shit the bed so hard
Yes, exactly.
that these two fucktards come to power.
That's more of an interesting film to me.
Exactly. These two, you can't even consider them the main antagonists. I mean, they kind of are for a little bit, then
No,
it shifts over to Denzel.
Denzel
like-
ends up being the primary antagonist of the film.
Yeah, but not until like the second half. And then you get, of course, Denzel Washington,
I love this guy. Okay. Boom!
who is just the actor of his generation.
Denzel
kind of
is-
cashing a paycheck in this movie, but I mean,
Yeah.
he's still like his presence in every scene is great.
Denzel is perhaps my favorite actor of all time. He's up there,
Yeah.
if he's not, you
Yeah.
know. And in this one, at least you can say fucker's having a good time.
Oh, he was having a ball.
Even though sometimes I do feel like he took it slightly over the top in some areas, like a little too
Yeah.
much.
I'm just here for the games.
I felt a little Alonzo coming out.
Yeah, exactly.
but-
And like, oh, I can add this like little actor thing here and there, like this little quirk, you know, fucking actors.
Right, but but when he was measured, he was fantastic.
Denzel, you know.
He's Denzel.
it!
He's doing his own manipulating behind the scenes because, as it turns out, he was sold into slavery, I guess, when Marcus Aurelius was emperor or something. So he's got his own like vengeance. He wants to be the instrument of the fall of Rome.
Yeah.
They don't really get into his backstory until like the third act.
But that's exactly right. And like when they do, it's half-assed. It's just
right,
like,
it's rushed and it's half-assed, and it's like, well, I wish I knew this earlier so we can like really dive into this character a little more and like I could care about what his motivations are a little more. But he doesn't fall into Lucius's radar until like the third act.
Exactly.
As an antagonist.
Yeah.
Like he's got Pedro Pascal, like he's got tunnel vision for Pedro until he fights him in like the second act, and you're like, well, that was his whole motivation, so what the fuck?
and then suddenly he cares about saving Rome. And it's
Yeah,
like,
even though he hates Rome the whole freaking movie.
yeah, that wasn't earned.
Yeah, no, none of that was earned. That whole third act, it was like they shifted everything so much that like everyone's motivations completely changed, and you're like, well, what the fuck? Like, all right.
The one thing that I think is slightly weak about the original Gladiator is sort of the political intrigue in that movie.
Yeah, it's kind of an afterthought.
Especially after watching things like Rome on HBO or Game of Thrones, like where you have all these like complex political
Yeah, because I mean,
dramas.
those are shows you have more time to.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why.
Yeah.
But the political intrigue of Gladiator, it's very simple. It's simplified.
It's not really what the story's about.
No, it's not. But Marcus Aurelius, his whole plight is very like idealistic and a little sappy almost. This movie, it tries to have that political intrigue as well, but it sucks even more than the first one.
Yeah, they lean on it a lot more in this one.
But
Because
it's
they
not
kind of
as-
have to, because what's going on with Lucius, it's like kind of not enough. So they lean on these other characters with this political shit going on. It's like the same shit you tried to do in the first film. It's like everything Maximus fought for.
Right.
And now we're fighting for it again in this one.
Only this time, it's different.
Russell Crowe has that masculine stoicism that is just lost on every male actor.
Yeah.
Even the most masculine male actors nowadays, which I would probably consider this Paul Mescal guy like a Chris Hemsworth or something.
Yeah.
Someone who kind of takes over and does these like action films or like masculine roles. And I like Chris Hemsworth, but guys like that don't have what Russell Crowe had and understood
Yeah.
in the original Gladiator. It's just not there anymore. And like Maximus embodies that in the original Gladiator.
You remember the opening of the film? It was kind of that like animated recap.
I didn't like that, but yes.
Okay, I didn't really like it either.
Yeah, a lot of people
And
are
then
saying, "Oh, that's cool." No,
I mean,
that sucked.
it didn't tonally feel like it
No, it's
belonged
stupid.
in Gladiator.
I like when a sequel starts and the title is like the same as the first one. It gets you back into that same
exactly.
world.
It's like when Top Gun Maverick starts.
It's the exact same.
It does the whole aircraft carrier with the same song and like gets you like into
even
it.
the beats, showing the titles and showing like getting into the actual footage
Yeah,
of the
the
film.
same music starts when the Paramount logo comes out, like-
it's all the exact same to get you back into that
Yes,
world.
it like puts you right in that mindset. Like you don't need
Yes.
to like this weird recap. Like, and if you're gonna do a recap like that, do it in the Roman style of like,
Yeah.
do it in busts or like,
yes,
do it
exactly.
in like statues where you're seeing these like gladiator like
Yeah.
frozen moments from the films. Like that would have been cooler. It would have made more
Exactly. I
sense. Like it would have fit
completely
the
agree.
time period better.
Ridley Scott, just like we said earlier about Alien and Prometheus, just doesn't care about like the legacies of his own movies, you know?
Yeah.
That's kind of left behind. And also what's left behind is a great score.
Yes, that's where I was gonna go next.
Like part of like the opening title also is if they use sort of the same score getting into the movie.
Yeah.
They did not. This one, Hans Zimmer does not come back. It was Harry Gregson Williams,
Mm-hmm.
who I think is a fantastic composer, and I think that his best score arguably is from actually a Ridley Scott film, which was Kingdom of Heaven. That score is phenomenal. Anyways, Hans Zimmer is like the backbone of Gladiator, and his absence is
No, it's felt.
it's felt.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like Harry Gregson Williams, he uses some of the themes here and there.
There's a couple moments where the themes pop up and you
couple.
immediately recognize it. Like, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
like, oh, this is the greatness of a Gladiator score, you know. But no, for the most part, it's just kind of this dull, by the numbers.
Yeah, it's very
modern
forgettable.
score. Yeah, which is unfortunate because again, you want to use all these ways of making you feel like you're entering the same universe once again, and it's a missed opportunity when you don't have the same composer come back and kind of work that same magic.
I thought, what if I can create a theme for Lucius that becomes Hans's theme from the first movie?
I love that he took it and just expanded it, making something which is so extraordinary.
Look-wise, I think it was the same DP.
It was
that
the
came
same
back.
DP, yeah.
So I mean, yeah, there were things that did feel a little the same.
Well, but the original was shot on film, and now
Yes.
this is a digital version of it.
Correct.
You know.
Yeah, the original film just felt grittier.
That is one of the best looking movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
The only critique I have of it is that that was back in their late 90s, early 2000s, where they were shooting Super 35 and they stayed away from anamorphic. So it's a Super 35 movie, but it's one of the best looking, if not the best looking Super 35 film. You know.
And all of the gladiator fight scenes in this film, they're fine. They're
okay.
They're
not nearly as memorable as the first film.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
That naval battle.
Okay, so if you watch the commentary for Gladiator, in the very beginning of the film when they're fighting the German army, there's a part where the archers, they light up their arrows with fire.
Yep.
And the way they do that is there's like this little thin trench dug up in front of them that has like some sort of flammable liquid in there, and that's how they light their arrow tips on fire. And in the commentary, Ridley Scott was talking about how he was criticized by historians after seeing that. That's not what they did in the battlefield. And Ridley Scott was like, well, how do you know, mate?
You weren't fucking there.
Yeah, you weren't there. And so I remember thinking, like, when I was a young guy and I heard that, I was like, yeah, you know what? Fuck those guys. Like, how do they know? I was like totally on Ridley Scott's side.
Yeah.
You know, the first one tried so hard to like be somewhat historically accurate.
Yeah,
you know?
for the most part it is.
For the most
I mean, with
part.
the exception of like what they did with real life characters.
I'm sure there's tons of liberties in there, more than we know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it still tried to feel like a grounded historical epic. This one, I can't defend Ridley Scott in this one.
No.
Because he's filling up the fucking Coliseum with water now and shit.
Yeah.
And there's sharks in the water. It's like up the ante, up the ass, you
There
know?
is evidence that they did try to fill the Coliseum with water and they tried to do some naval battles, but it was very costly. It was rarely done. But they never fucking put sharks in it.
Well,
that is so stupid on its face.
It's one of those things where Ridley Scott had just heard, oh, did you know that at one point they had put water in the Coliseum? And he's like, fuck it, that's in the movie.
Let's get some great whites in there.
That's now kind of what they do.
It's like, you just think about that. That water's coming from the Tiber River or whatever. It's fresh water, and then they're bringing saltwater sharks in. First of all, how the fuck are they going to get them from the Mediterranean inland 30 miles to Rome?
Dude, that's my entire thought was like how do they transport them?
Yeah,
like, what? They don't have tanks and shit?
Sharks. It's just like, it's not enough that a dude gets like shot with an arrow and falls into the water and drowns.
Fucking put sharks in there.
Stupid.
So, I don't know, man. What do you think about Gladiator II?
Well, I thought it was pretty mid,
Yeah.
as the kids say these days. So, as far as ranking goes, I didn't dislike it. We were entertained. So, I went 5 out of 10. I went straight down the middle, like, it's okay.
I'm giving it a slightly better review than you. I give it a 5.5.
My decision disappoints you?
Like I said, I guess I was just shocked that it was not the train wreck I expected it to be.
No, it was definitely not a train wreck.
Right, it's just so
But
forgettable.
I think it's just because they were like, what did we do in the first film? Let's just do that again, but we'll just add more shit.
Yeah, and we'll make it dumber. In terms of sequels that should not exist, this is like at the top
It's
of the
at the
list.
top.
It is brutal and cruel and dark.
Now, in terms of the rainbow score.
Yes, our other score. There were some things. The very first shot in that recap, do you remember what it was?
No, I don't.
It's the black gladiator chick.
Oh my God, that's right. The one
Right?
that they.
Who's
yeah.
in the first movie for like a very short, like brief
course,
moment.
yes.
She's the first shot in this, in that like animated backup. And I was like, who's that? And I forgot about it as I was watching the movie.
Right.
And I started looking back up the first movie and I'm like, oh shit, it was that random black chick gladiator who was in the first movie for like in the background.
Who was there probably just as like a weird
prisoner of conquest or whatever.
Right, exactly.
It kind of set a tone for me as like the first shot in that thing. I was like,
yeah, that's a good point.
And then you got like his warrior wife, and she's telling him to be gentle and shit.
Yeah.
And she goes off the bat, and I was like, where is this going? But then a lot of that just kind of gets abandoned.
They do, yes.
They abandon it, but like when the movie started, I was like, oh fuck, what am I in store for?
One of my first notes, if not my first note, is like fucking chick with like war tattoos and shit on her face, and I'm like, oh God,
I was
fuck
like, wait a
this.
minute, what is this? The Vikings?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
well, but even then, yeah, like
still.
But they do abandon that though.
It sets a tone in the beginning that I was like, is this where we're going for this?
Yeah.
But it is abandoned. And then it just kind of picks up the same beats of the first film. Very poorly written dialogue that was very expositional, where they were talking about like what Rome could be, how we just gotta like let everybody into Rome. If you know anything about like the history of the downfall of Rome, there were a lot of reasons Western Rome fell, but like one of them was
they let women vote.
They let women vote. A lot of people were coming into the empire that were not assimilating, if you know what I mean, right? Well, basically, we got to just open Rome's borders and let every single person in.
Yeah, there were like refugee positive
there were some
propaganda in there.
Some modern bullshit in there.
Yes.
Not a lot, but it's sprinkled in there.
They can't help themselves.
They just
so
can't.
So
They
it's
can't.
still in there. And then like, there's like all the gay shit in it. However, a lady friend of ours reached out to us and showed us a tweet from someone who had mentioned that this film is actually covertly based.
Yes, quite based.
Yes, because it's kind of showing the homosexuals that run the country in a very negative light,
very
showing them
deviant
for the decadent perverts.
Yes, and they're the villains.
And they're the villains of the film.
Yes.
And like this dude who is like a straight, strong, white male is like
comes in and cleans house. He fucking gets rid of all that shit,
right?
So we can get Rome back on track,
right? So
it's kind of a funny observation.
She sent it to us like group text, and like when I read it, I was like, like I don't know if I'd go so far to say that the movie was trying to have that message.
It might have accidentally.
Exactly. It's more of an accident when they accidentally make a movie that's sort of based. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Accidentally based is more likely.
Sure. It's more like one of those things where something was made unintentionally normal. So
right.
You're like,
so
oh
it
my
feels
God,
based.
It's based.
It's based, but it's just normal.
Yeah. It's like no, these guys are just fucking creepy weirdos. So. But shit was like that back then. Like they were fucking weirdos back then. There was like no agenda with the gay shit in it really.
Yeah, it didn't feel like there was any agenda.
Because like you said, it's an agenda if like they're gay and like no matter what they're the good guy.
Yeah, right.
They didn't even attempt to do that in this movie.
No.
So I'd probably just give it like a 1.5.
Yeah, I was gonna go 1.5.
Yeah. They didn't use the Gladiator franchise as a loudspeaker for current year politics.
Right. Those are my notes. How did these come to power?
I said the same thing, dude. I said the same thing.